our representatives are on, so I'll pass the microphone.
I think there was a little bit of confusion about, my who's going to present today. But anyway, I had volunteered to do that, but then I didn't hear much about it. But anyway, I'll talk something. Can you hear me? We can. Okay. I will talk about 5 minutes, but I'm going to mostly focus on job opportunities for for this specialty, and given my own background, which is slightly more international, so I think my job opportunity presentation will also reflect a little bit of my own experience, and also the kind of jobs that normally don't people don't talk about, because it involves international settings and so on and so forth. But anyway, I just want to in the outset talk about community practice, just not really just as simply as macro practice. That's what we normally call that as, but also as something that involves broadly, brings together a lot of the micro and the macro together. Because when you get involved in any kind of macro practice, of course you are always to take into consideration what happens at the micro level also. So all kinds of interventions that we will study through this course, even though they are macro focused, will also be linked or somehow hooked into the micro implications of the macro interventions that you practice. Anyway, from a job perspective, I think you need to look at macro practice and community practice more broadly, in terms of its overlap with many other kinds of, job opportunities, and, job opportunities that are available. That reminds me of my own training in sociology when I came. I did my PhD in sociology. So after I came, out of the college with the university with a PhD in sociology, look for jobs for a sociologist. There isn't anything for a sociologist. There is no job actually, what do you call, presented or advertised for sociologists. So you have to find our own niche, and you have got to really look for that. So at the outset, therefore, I really want to emphasize the fact that from a job opportunity point of view, you have got to really look at the overlaps of CAP, community practices, with other kinds of known or well-established, so to speak, professions such as urban planning, public administration, social development, policy analysis, and things like that. There are a lot of these areas, where CAP specialty, people who have specialty in that area can work, but you are going to find your way in, so to speak. Um, all the settings that I mentioned, like planning, public administration, social development, etc. They're all they all provide opportunities, but you have to make your entry first, and that's and that entry, and how do you make that entry? We are going to have to take the kind of courses that gives you the basic skills that are really common to all these kinds of fields, which overlap with CAP, with community practice, and you get that within this specialty, and therefore it gives you the kind of skills and tools that you need to work in these kinds of settings. I can tell you a little bit about my own experience, with after my MSW. While I was doing my MSW, I was involved in in a it's called the Indian India Seva Society, help society, um, or service society actually. Um, and I was involved in a low cost housing project in a slum area. It was a voluntary position that I had, but that experience working with low cost housing alongside with my my specialization, we didn't call that community practice those days, we called that social development there, but basically they have a lot of in common. I made that my entry into planning, into urban planning. After that, my first job was actually with an urban development authority, because of my experience and specialization in community practice. Um, uh, So after I did that, I also did something in the area of policy development. And then how do you get into, in the area of policy analysis, policy development, and so on and so forth. And that also depends upon, how you sell yourself, and also, getting the kind of exposure, sometimes voluntary and things like that, after your training here or during your training and internship here. In my case, I worked for a family planning program, where initially I was just was part of a survey project that conducted a survey on the differences in perception of family planning between men and women. And this was in a foreign country in Zambia at that time. And my work with that organization actually led into something very, very, very fascinating, because this was involved or closely tied to population control and so on and so forth. So, and I made a lot of contact, while I was working for the Planned Parenthood of Zambia. Because of the contact, I got an invite to to participate in a policy development uh, for the country. For they were actually at the time making the designing the first population policy for the country as a whole, and I got an invite to be a part of that, and that was a very fascinating experience. And I, worked as a in that policy making, project. I was involved with the drafting of the first population policy for Zambia at that time, and the tools and the skills I needed for that was simply, everything that you get in community practice, basically, social research skills, advocacy skills, communication, report writing, and these kinds of things, which you get through the program, through the specialization. And that's all that I used for this. But it was a very fascinating program, but though it was in an international setting. And also, macro practice also involves, using several kinds of democratic principles, social justice principles. Of course, you have heard about that from the very beginning of the MSW program, and of course, and also pragmatic approaches, being practical. And these kinds of skills, principles, are very useful when you work in programs and projects that are targeted at special populations like teens, children, elderly, etc. Um, and again, working with specialized populations like that, the skills that you need are, again, advocacy skills, report writing, grant writing, and those kinds of things, which enables you to do that. Um, um, but I just also want to, tell you about some of the programs that we normally don't, I mean, job opportunities that we normally don't, hear about. Those and are about, the social impact programs, right? If you look at big corporations such as Microsoft, Google, and other kinds of big corporations, Amazon, and so on and so forth, they spend billions of dollars on these what are called the social impact programs, and those are basically programs that involve addressing community problems, right? You might have, of course, heard of the Belinda and Gates Foundation, right, which operates not only nationally but also internationally, and they look at very small community programs and then encourage people from the local communities to come up with solutions to solve local level community problems. And these there are several kinds of job opportunities available not only nationally but also internationally to work with these kinds of models. In fact, a lot of my friends who have MSWs, do work with Microsoft, where they are in, of course, they're senior people right now, but they got into into these corporations at a very at the early stages of their career, and they have gone up the ladder, so to speak. Now, again, what do social impacts perhaps might sound such as sound a little bit of fashionable or little, jargony. But basically, it requires dealing with knowing the normal medical model that you are all aware of, like study, diagnosis, and treatment. Combine that with, with advocacy, leadership, report writing, grant writing, those kinds of things. You package those things, both the micro and the macro skills that you have into something that enables you to provide leadership for communities at the local level. And there are lots of positions available on that.
I think that's very helpful to the students. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Pillai, but I want to make sure that we also have time for the questions, because I've seen a lot of things come across in the chat. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow, but I wanted to make sure we catch some of the questions. I know that you have Catherine Kitchens joining you today, and so I want to also give her a chance to reflect about her experience as a student in CAP as well before we transition to questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah. So, so I think I probably will sign off at this point, and I think I probably have said most of the.
If you'll hang on, if we have a couple of questions, but if you want to let your student speak and share from her experience, that'd be great.
Okay. Let Karen.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Catherine, and I am a CAP student, and I think it's fitting that we're ending the evening with CAP because I have a very short story that shows how everything that you've heard about tonight fits in with macro social work. It's called the river story. I actually heard it from Professor Magruder. So you imagine that you see a large river and there is a tall waterfall, and you see people at the base of the river frantically trying to save people from drowning. And as more and more people along the shore are going to save these people, someone looks up at the waterfall and notices that there's a stream of people that keep following down. And this person decides to go up the stream, and someone yells, "What are you doing? Come back here. We need people helping us save the drowning people." And she says, "I'm going to go up there and figure out why these people are falling in the river." And to me, that's what macro social work is. And I'm actually married to a LMSW who's working on his clinical license. And we talk a lot about micro, macro, where they fit in with each other. And we've really come to the conclusion that they go hand in hand. We need direct practice social workers helping the people that are drowning in the river, and we need macro social workers to go upstream to fix the problems that are impacting these clients. So I think, we do talk about, Denise talked about person and environment, and sometimes you think of environment or the policies, the structures that give privilege to some and are barriers and obstacles to others. And so the reason I went into macro is I want to go into health disparities research. I'm working on a thesis right now that's related to how segregation correlates with health disparities and how, negative health outcomes in the Black community. So for me, macro social work was a choice of just prioritizing advocacy work, policy work, and research that exposes the issues. I think in our Western culture, we can tend to pathologize people, and we sometimes think the problems people have are based on bad decisions they've made, and we forget these systems and structures that are limiting them and causing the problem. So if you don't, no matter what specialty you're interested in, you can ratchet it up and go upstream and go macro. So, oh, and SAMSWA, there is a macro student org, and I'm the president. I'll put a link in the chat if anyone's interested.
I think that is the perfect icing on the cake, Catherine.